Hi, my name is Amanda Lancaster, and I'm going to walk through my week 2 discussion for ADR. Um, I was able to sit in on a senior housing council, resident council this week, and I would say that we use both distributive and integrative approaches, and I'll explain that as we go through my examples. So the first thing that we did a really good job about was we took the time ahead of time to walk through the procedures and processes that we wanted to have in place. We actually wrote them out and printed them so that they were available to both sides at the beginning. It was a time-sensitive type of meeting, and so we didn't want to waste time going through that. We kind of wanted to have it pre-done. We did that through email, and then we just had it printed and ready for everybody. And we really focused on cooperation, friendly environment, and kind of getting away from blaming or using power moves to, or threats actually, to walk away if we didn't get to what we wanted. The background on this is that a few years ago, the Department of Defense they did a civilian contract to manage all of base housing across the Department of Defense. So what that's done is it's taken power away from wing commanders or chain of command when we have housing issues. And place that into this contract. And that, this includes like people who do your maintenance work orders, all that kind of stuff. And so it can be very frustrating for the residents to be in this kind of like constant loop of a bureaucracy versus what we're used to being a chain of command. And, there's a process and a clear way and a clear resolution. And so it could easily have been distributive in nature. And so we kind of had to haul it back and kind of make it more integrative in nature. The next thing that we really did a good job on was openly saying that because this was a new panel, we were going to put relationship building to the side. We were all happy to be working together. We were all happy to be building relationships with each other to make this a better living environment, but that wasn't the focus of the meeting or the negotiation. And so we were able to kind of re-emphasize that this was based on the interests that we had identified and prioritized. And then we did a really good job of kind of staying to that substance. So in describing something, we could easily get into a positional stance that could have stalled kind of our problem solving and our way ahead. But we worked really hard not to do that, to focus it back on the interests versus the positions of each side. And then the last thing I would say that we did a good job on was communication. We worked really hard to make sure we weren't using acronyms or things that were misunderstood so that when each party walked away, we clearly knew what we'd committed to, what we were going to be doing, and then our follow-up. Again, kind of more integrative versus distributed in that sense. But I will say we had to be really careful about the information that we did share. Some of this goes back to the perception issue. You have to put yourselves in each other's shoes, but then there's also some privacy information that is coming up as we're talking about some of these interests and the backing of them and why they're higher than others in terms of priority. And so we had to go in kind of knowing what we couldn't completely talk about or what we had to openly say, we can't give you all the details on this because it's violating, we call it PII. I think that's a fairly common term, but there's another example of an acronym that could be misunderstood. And we also wanted to make sure that we didn't make it a debate about things, like there's certain things that we couldn't address in terms of communication. Like we couldn't focus on the contract issues. We had to focus on the interests that we had identified. And, eventually we could bring back in that contract later down the road, but that wasn't really the topic of today. And so, really kind of keeping all of those things in mind or in context. And then, kind of as we went through the priorities, in the beginning, the interest priorities, we had to really talk about why we ranked them that way. Or I shouldn't say we kind of skipped that. We kind of just took it at face value. But, we could have easily gotten farther into that detail of why, it was 1 or 2 or versus 3 or 4. But we did identify, kind of their pecking order. We just didn't get kind of farther down into it. So I guess that's something we could have improved on. But overall, those are probably my 3 big takeaways on the success of our negotiation and how it related to both the 2 distributive and integrative approaches.